Hey, everybody, another episode of the Crazy People podcast. Today, disabilities/abilities advocate, Ron Fish. Really cool guy. What'd you think, Maurice?
I think it's an incredibly important topic that
Yeah.
if you haven't been in touch, in contact with it, you really forget about it, right? And it makes you feel incredibly stupid.
Yeah.
Like, oh,
You go, wow, that
Jesus,
was, yeah.
yeah, I just behaved like a numbnuts there. No, Ron was fantastic.
Yeah.
I liked his stories about DEI as well as HR. Because he's also a recruiter. He recruited for large companies, 300,000 employees, and so on, all the way to smaller companies. I like that he said that he's now at a smaller company, still 3,000 employees, right?
Tiny little, only 3,000. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I thought it was cool how he talked about, how the applicant tracking system was a little behind the scenes of the recruitment thing. As for people thinking about looking for jobs or looking for jobs today, that section will definitely be pretty interesting to you all.
Yeah.
Little behind the music
You
kind of
kind of
thing.
sneaked AI in there.
Yeah, I had to.
Yeah.
I had to mention AI.
Yeah.
We haven't had AI in like a few episodes, so I had to.
I know. We had to sneak it in there.
But
No,
yeah, good dude.
no. On all seriousness, very good dude.
Yeah.
Very different topics that we tackled from a hiring perspective, from an applicant perspective, and then of course the diversity and the different degrees of diversity, different areas of diversity that you have to think of and can think of, and how to become a better employer. At the end of the day, right? And it's not just because it's the right thing to do, but it's also because all of your employees will thank you for it eventually, right? Because they can be who they are as well, right? And not worry about all the other stuff.
And this is a guy who won awards for it, right? He won awards for this. He knows his stuff.
Yeah, just only a few, like 47 or so. I don't know. And supposedly he knows about a restaurant on the moon.
There we go. Don't give it away. You got to listen.
No.
You got to watch.
With that cliffhanger, stay tuned. Grab yourself something to drink. As always, lean back and enjoy this episode as you listen to it, as you watch it, and there's another crazy person in there. All right, here we go.
Because really, what could go wrong once you press record, right?
Exactly. What could go wrong? It's all got to be very perfect.
Welcome to another edition of Crazy People Doing a Podcast, the Crazy People Podcast. Over in this ear, I am Russ Broomell. On the far side is the Captain of Curiosity, Mr. Maurice Hofmann. And in the hot seat between us today, Ron Fish. Welcome, Ron.
Hey, thanks, Russ. Great to be here.
It's good to have you,
brother. Yeah. So tell us a little bit. Who's Ron Fish? What's going on? Our listeners, our viewers don't know you. Tell us what's going on, man?
Well, you might get a different answer from different people in my life, but we'll keep it professional and say that I head up talent acquisition for a software company based in Utah. And in addition, my unofficial job, I operate as an ambassador for accessibility and disability inclusion here at Ivanti. And really overall in the broader market, I'm doing a lot of work in the broader HR ecosystem in that regard today.
First of all, thanks for being on the show. What can the audience imagine what it is that you do in the second field before we start with the HR stuff? The inclusion and disability, what is it that you do in that area?
So my focus now is to do, essentially to get the word out to sort of evangelize inclusion in the workplace from the disability side of things. Interestingly, when you look at diversity programs at companies, 90% focus on gender diversity in the workplace. About 75% of companies focus on race and ethnicity. Believe it or not, only 5% have disability as part of their DEI program. So what I'm really trying to do here is say, hey, let's move disability from just the charity category over to DEI, because at the end of the day, people with disabilities want jobs. They want to get hired. And that's what I'm here to talk about.
Yeah. So what brought you to that topic?
So I have a number of individuals with disabilities in my life and my family, and they've inspired me to, really my professional and personal life have begun to meld a little bit based on some things that occurred at my companies. I've always, since about 2017, built accessible aspects into hiring programs from a universal design perspective, ensuring that we have accommodations, that we do include people with disabilities, and understand that there are some elements that we can add to optimize somebody's interview experience when they have a disability. So I've been doing that for a while. Back in 2022 at my company, we discovered that our entire corporate website was not accessible. So we were eliminating people with disabilities from our applicant pool. When that happened, and in the project of working with my website team to unlock accessibility on our website, I say I kind of went from knee deep in this to just like all in. So it's really inspired me. I've gotten a little bit, to kind of quote your podcast name, I've gotten a little crazy about it. I'm kind of obsessed with, both the work that I do at my company as well as the outreach that I do.
Yeah, I think it's fantastic that you do that because it's such a big topic. And Russ, by the way, I sat with our big customer back in the day, and Larry over in Philadelphia in a high building, and we talked to a specialist for accessibility, and that was my first real experience when it came to that topic. And how far-reaching it is, right? So, as an average person, you don't get in touch with that, and you don't understand the importance, and you don't understand how important it is to be so inclusive and what it really means from a technological perspective, but also from an organizational management perspective. So, how do people react when you come with your story and when you come with that argument and when you come with that push?
Yeah, I think the biggest part of what I've done is really raise awareness and bring visibility to the fact that there are different perspectives, right? I grew up, my father was blind my whole life. So for me, it was natural for him to be sitting in a room with no lights on and me to not go flip the light switch on because I knew that it wouldn't make a difference for him. Right. So to me, that was commonplace. For somebody else, they've never seen that. So with that being the case, I think everybody receives it really well. But I think even I've talked to people with disabilities that are on the speaker tour that are very inspirational, fantastic speakers. And they say, Ron, I bring this inspiration to companies, but they never really connect that with real programs and how they can make an impact and hire better, and do hiring and hire people with disabilities. So it's really what I'm trying to do is be that, that catalyst there that can say, hey, let's take disability from the charity side of things. Let's bring it into real programs as part of our diversity initiatives. And we can really make an impact, remove the stigma, normalize some things. So if somebody's a little different in an interview, it might not be that they're not a great fit. It might be that they're neurodiverse, so they don't know to look at the camera or to look at the screen, or they're looking away. We don't judge them as quickly. So training, education for hiring managers and everybody in the process is very important.
Yeah, and sometimes it's so easy, right, to get from a point. If you, for example, the neurodiverse part, my son has a friend who is neurodiverse, and initially, like for the first one or two meetings, we were like, why is that boy so rude, right? And then eventually we got to meet the parents, and they were apologizing right away. And the very second they were starting apologizing, I was like, okay, I get it. I get it. And then, but after that, we had an entirely different approach to his behavior. And suddenly now sometimes he's sitting there and he's just talking to us and being part of the situation, whether or not my son is there, right? And that is where I felt so, looking back, I felt so stupid, right? Because I was just judging the boy, and at that point he was like 6 years old, right? So who am I to judge that little guy, right? And now it's like, okay, I understand him, and now I can appreciate whatever is going on with him, right? And I think that's why it's so important what you're doing, because sometimes if you just had the knowledge and an understanding of a certain condition or situation, or just simply experience to recognize whatever is going on, because not everybody needs to run around with a label, right? That's not what we want to have, right? We could
Agreed.
we could be smarter, reacting the right way, right? Or looking for the right things to have that understanding.
Yeah, most of us have empathy, right? Like we see somebody in a situation, we recognize it. We're typically sympathetic or empathetic to their situation. But if you don't know, and when you talk about autism, dyslexia, and these neurodiverse conditions, they're invisible. So you don't automatically know it. And our biases have us judge somebody really quickly, where once we know that there's something else happening, that this person is not bad, they're not less intelligent, they're different, their brain is wired a little differently, then we can be very empathetic, because now we understand, and then we can accommodate, right? And that's what it's about, is that awareness that makes a big impact.
All right, so I have a question, Ron. As I was a young man getting started in my career, my dad always advised me, know who you're going to interview with and dress the way they dress. Like, the easiest way to get hired is to look like the people who you're working with. And we've discovered over the years that that's just a terrible way to hire people. If I just hire everybody who looks like me, that's just dumb. So, but how do you help people think through when somebody physically looks different, when they act different, when they've got a different condition or whatever it is? It might be a superpower in the job, but if you're judging, I only want people who look kind of like me, that's the only people I'm comfortable with. How do you talk people through that?
Yeah, that's a coaching thing, right? And I train all my recruiters to sort of have those instincts. And aside from the disabilities piece, neurodiversity and all of that, we try to train managers to limit their bias, not eliminate it, because sometimes our gut feeling is we shouldn't hire this person. And if you really feel like that in your gut as a hiring manager, you probably shouldn't hire them, right? But at the end of things, when we look at all these small nuances, and if we're judging somebody based on, their shirt collar was like outside their suit jacket, or they didn't have a tie, or they had a golf shirt on and I'm wearing a button down shirt, maybe they didn't have the right level of respect, because I thought that way as well, right? But the days in the 80s of sitting across from 20 people at IBM and, having to be perfect and then sweating it out, waiting for the letter to come in the mail to find out if you got the job or not, are behind us. So I think Microsoft really pioneered a lot of the, be casual at work, bring your whole self to work sort of thing. So these are definitely, I think it's becoming a little more common in society. People aren't quite as uptight. Hiring managers aren't quite as uptight, but lots of coaching. So my recruiters are trained to coach, to limit our bias, to look at it as, if it's a small concern during the interview, use it as a data point. Don't, use it as a bias. And now we're doing confirmation bias, right? We see one thing and now we're like, oh, they didn't look me in the eye. Now I'm going to look for every little thing they do wrong, versus use it as a data point. So really it's that visibility and awareness, but it's also coaching when we're talking about from a talent acquisition and HR perspective, whether it's for managers managing their people, whether it's looking at interviews, hiring people, awareness, coaching is key.
Yeah, and sometimes you deal with people who are really bad at interviews, right?
That's right. Yeah.
They could be fantastic in all the other categories, but really the interviewing is super bad, right? I once had a guy, and it was an internship, so it's easier, but show up in a suit with a cow pattern, black and white cow pattern. And that was an entire suit. And I was like, you gotta be kidding me. Who are you? Just for that, I wanted to know more about him, who he was. And he was a fantastic little guy. But that was fantastic. That was ridiculous to show up in an interview, even though it was an agency, a marketing agency, but to have a cow pattern on, that was special. Especially
he made an impression. We say, right?
I would hire that guy, but then look at my shirts. So what am I going to do?
I know.
His name wasn't Russ, was it?
No, not quite. Not quite. But the thing is, since you're talking about diversity, I think, so when I hired people, I always look for people that weren't like me, because the company or the team that I was hiring for, right, it was my team, they already had me. So I needed other people to get other perspectives and to get other input, because I don't need anybody who has the same opinion as me, because then it gets really boring, right? If everybody has the same opinion, same taste, then they all run around the same way, right? And have the same comments and judge the same way. So I always looked for people that were as different from me as possible. Is that unique? Is that more what we need of, or where's the balance in this? Because obviously you can only have so many different shades of people.
Yeah, I think it's a great perspective. And I would say that the majority probably are looking more for like, hey, I like this person. They were from the same town, from the same part of the country. They tell the same jokes. We think each other is funny. We like the same kind of restaurants, sort of thing. But I think you're correct, right? We need to look and think from a diverse perspective. If we're trying to do the best thing for our function, for our company, having those diverse perspectives can really make a big impact within individual teams. So I think it's not as unique as it used to be. People, again, the awareness has made us all sort of take a second look, and I like to step back and view it with a wider lens. So that sounds like maybe something that you have naturally that others have had to learn. So that's awesome. I like it.
Well, I'm from Germany. I always was the different guy in the rooms, right? So, so that made it really easy. But let's take a step back. And so where do you come from? What is your background? How did you end up in HR?
Yeah, that's what I want to know. How'd you get here?
Yeah, it's funny. I love to ask that question, especially when we refine it to recruiting. Like, how'd you get into recruiting? Because not many people like went to school for it and then ended up in that career, right? So most of us came from different places. So my first job in HR and recruiting was with a temp agency recruiting light industrial office workers for temp assignments. So I was managing a janitorial business in Buffalo, New York. Before I relocated to Charlotte, North Carolina, where I'm at still today.
Much better weather too.
Oh yeah, much. That was one of the two reasons I moved. The other one was the economy in Buffalo. But yeah, so I came to Charlotte. They loved my experience with sort of the blue collar hiring and firing. And at that time, the job market was such that if you had a pulse, you were qualified, so you were hired. So I'd like to think that it was my charm and good looks and my wit and my intelligence, but probably had a little bit of a tailwind from the job market. But I did land my first job in recruiting. I stayed there for about a year and a half, and I found out how much everybody was making in IT on the IT recruiting side. And then I made that leap, and I've sort of stayed on in that genre ever since.
Yeah, I've seen you spend a few years with Oracle, for instance. So the sizes of companies, were you like more like corporate, or did you also do smaller companies?
Yeah, so I definitely, my trajectory went to the large company environment. So working at Oracle for 8.5 years, it was over 100,000, I don't know, 150,000 when I left. Then I was on the IT services side with Cognizant. At the height was, 300,000 employees. So when I moved from those large environments, I kind of intentionally began to look for smaller employers because I wanted to do something more meaningful. At that time, I didn't envision it was going to turn into this obsession with accessibility and disability inclusion, but I wanted to do things like this that were more meaningful, where I was doing more end-to-end in the hiring process, focused on employer brand, interacting with the executives of the company. And, that's sort of what led me to the smaller brands, which are more challenging. If you call up and say, hey, I'm with Oracle, I'm recruiting for such and such a position, everybody knows who you are. When you're with smaller brands, it's more of an uphill climb. So that's been interesting. I feel like it's really diversified my skill set. And then I did find this passion in addition to the people side of it, to really focus on accessibility. So here I am, and that's what's led me to the smaller company. So current company today, Ivanti, is about just a little under 3,000 employees, and I've worked with companies as small as a couple hundred, up to the 300,000 range.
Yeah, that's amazing. Where's the other than the end-to-end range? Where's the other big difference in working in a small company versus a big company?
I think in a big company, you feel a little bit like a cog in the wheel sometimes, where it's more about production, it's scale, and so on. Where with a smaller company, your skills are used. You're more diverse in what you do every day. You're doing a lot more end to end. So, and then there's a lot more opportunity for coaching, hiring managers, like we've talked about, doing training. We can do broader training for our hiring manager population, like we've done at my company. So there's a little bit maybe more control of some of those elements. And again, not being as big at scale, you're not the hamster on the wheel all the time. You can slow it down and do things that are more effective and can really make an impact more quickly than you can at a large company.
Yeah. I see that with your initiatives, you won a couple of awards and prizes. So how does it feel if you know that you're doing the right thing and you get a prize for that, an award for that?
I like thinking of it as a prize. That's kind of funny. But yeah, actually, it's really interesting because we gained momentum really quickly, and it did lead to 2 awards. One that I won for the company, one that I won personally in the Carolinas. It actually surprised me because I made such a quick impact. But when I did find out how few employers are including disability in their diversity initiatives, I was like, oh, and it was kind of a light bulb moment for me where I said, I need to do more here. So, winning the Golden Key Award from the Governor's Committee on Employment of People with Disabilities in Utah was absolutely incredible. The partnerships, partnering with the Division of Services for the Blind, and a number of other organizations in the community. And then winning the award here, where some of my peers in the Charlotte and the Carolinas area nominated me for that award, was very heartwarming, and I certainly appreciate it. And hope it gives a little credibility to a lot of what I'm sharing here, and hopefully it just goes towards giving back and the bigger message.
Yeah. So knowing all that and having experienced all that, how do you feel about seeing companies across the states, across the globe really, rolling back their DEI programs and really powered by the political climate, saying, okay, we can step back from that again, right? Because it's not so attractive anymore. Not everybody looks at us that much anymore. It's okay for us now to save that money again. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, I hope that at a minimum, the trend, that came where diversity was top of mind has really influenced and helped us at a systemic level where everybody's doing things a little differently today. And even though maybe some of these larger programs are limited or not quite as prevalent as they were, hopefully there's been some change at the individual level where we're seeing things differently. And certainly when you look at, if we put everything aside and say, let's look at individuals with disabilities, many of which were born with those, I think it's the right thing, right? To level the playing field, to create a scenario where differences can be accepted and we can move it forward. So that's my hope, but it's not going to stop me from, doing what I can, doing my part, and hopefully maybe more than my part, and make an impact. So if I, can talk to one person that it resonates with, they tell somebody else, and we all collaborate together, many voices become harder to ignore. So
yeah, and I think too that there's a political pushback against the the idea of I'm just going to hire somebody because of they check a box somewhere and I can stick them in there, and I don't really expect them to do the job. I'm just going to And that's a terrible way. And it's bad for the company. It's bad for the person. Nobody likes that kind of a hire, right? But it's funny because over the years, I have a friend of mine who worked for a startup for a while, and they said that the best customer service people they ever hired were Starbucks baristas who had no idea about their industry, and they didn't, it didn't matter to them what they looked like, who they were, what their personality or lifestyle, anything else was. They said those people had a transferable skill somehow in dealing with idiots like me who want to order some weird special coffee all the time that translated over to what they were doing. And it just made them 5 stars all the way across the board. And they said, yeah, we figured it out because we were hiring somebody would come out of high school or college, whatever, with a degree that kind of poured it in, and they were terrible at this. And then we just on a lark hired somebody from Starbucks. And they were awesome at it. Right. But you have to think through what are the things that actually make a difference? So I'm based in Louisville, Kentucky. The American Printing House for the Blind is here in Louisville. And I had the privilege of doing some work with them a number of years back. And they've got a bunch of folks on staff programming, like technical people who are blind. And I had never worked with any blind, engineers before. But you realize, wonderful guys. And also, they know their customers. They are very in touch with the stuff that those people produce. So when they're making software, they're making stuff. They know people who are vision impaired and stuff like that. So it becomes, I think, Ron, and correct me if I'm wrong, it becomes more about thinking through what's actually needed in the job versus I want to try to check a box. It's thinking through maybe in some places that disability that other people would go, people go, yeah, that person brings something special. They're different, but that's exactly what we need. And they're better than the people who would be culturally approved to hire, whatever it is, right? Is that what it is, Ron?
Yeah, I think we always say that the word ability is in disability, right? So if we remove that and we talk about the ability community, absolutely. And that's why a lot of companies have started to really look heavily at skills-based hiring and get away from that traditional interview process where you have to look the part, you have to speak the part. You can't, say one thing wrong or you're being judged for it. But let's really look at the skills. Does this person have the core skills? And with a small accommodation, would they be able to accomplish the job, sort of thing, and be able to manage it and even bring skills or attributes that can be highly beneficial. Like you mentioned, the Starbucks baristas have a unique ability to succeed in that job because of whatever training ground they went through at Starbucks, which I don't envy being in that role for sure. But I saw that even with a veteran hiring program that I helped drive at Cognizant. We would hire veterans who had this unique ability to go into a situation that was unknown and figure it out with little information. Well, that's what consultants do, right? So the only thing they were lacking was like the technical part, the technology. So we would train them on the technology, like give them agile training so they would become certified Scrum Masters. Now all the other skills they had would have them head and shoulders above other individuals who had the college, they had the years of experience, but they didn't have that ability that you just can't train. You just can't create in the workplace, but somebody coming from the military. So 100% agree. And I think it's absolutely the same as we need to be looking at the abilities, not the disabilities, and understand is this certain attribute or this certain trait really a disadvantage in the job, or is it just something that we're looking at as different, thinking it's not normal and that the person couldn't succeed? So yeah, I like the thought process there, and I 100% agree to it.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah. And something that I just learned secondhand because a friend of mine, she switched from a pure German company to another German company with an entirely different attitude, Joe. Much more international. The headquarters is in the UK. And there were people running around barefoot and doing all kinds of stuff and wearing, Russ, your shirt is not even close to making the top 100 in that company.
Oh, geez.
And first she couldn't believe how happy everybody was. And then she eventually, after kind of starting to settle in, she made a remark to me. She sent me a text like, everybody's so happy because nobody has to worry about who they are. They just can come as they are and do their job. And that is so liberating a feeling, right? I haven't seen it myself in that way, but that must be perfect. And that is something, that's how I hand it back to you, a aspect of the DEI that we all kind of neglect, right? Because it's not just those people that have maybe a challenge, but it's everybody else is also pressed to be something that they maybe not are, because they don't feel free enough to bring all of themselves to the workplace because it's not appreciated.
Yeah, and I've never had a coworker run by me in bare feet. I would probably look twice, but I would accept it. I do love that. I mean, it's become, bring your whole self to work. And I love that. I always say, take it a step further and enable your people to be their whole self at work. Because bringing your whole self is one thing, but to be an inclusive environment that promotes belonging, where, I'm bringing my whole self to work, but I don't feel bad about myself because everybody just sort of accepts me. And like you said, it's great to hear about an environment like that where people can come in, be themselves, everybody's getting work done, and they're happy. It's a good place to work. That's awesome.
Yeah, it's I can be, as I said before, I think it's liberating, right? And it's something where there's so much energy to just try to be one version of yourself that you spend so much energy on being that is not invested in doing your actual job. I think it's crazy. I mean, Russ, at our joint company, we could be very much ourselves. Shiny shoes and all, and any pair of shoes too. And that was absolutely okay, right? But I haven't seen it to that degree yet, to be honest.
Yeah, it's hard to find out there in the wide world.
Yeah, absolutely. So, looking at your HR background, right? There's people looking for jobs right now. There's a lot of people looking for jobs. So how do you stand out?
How do I stand out from the standpoint of attracting talent?
No, how do you stand out as the individual looking for
as
a
an
job?
individual?
Yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah, I think it's a tough job market, right? I mean, some people have said that it's probably a tighter job market than it was during COVID. And I unfortunately had 5 months of unemployment during that time. And it is really hard to make yourself stand out. And then you begin to say, is there age discrimination going on for somebody with gray hair like me and Russ? And we can't tell with you, Maurice, but we,
That's why it's called.
So you do have to work to stand out. And I think it's tune your resume as much as you can. But at the end of the day, recognize that while you're qualified to do a given job and you may get that rejection email, stay the course, because there are a lot of people that are qualified for the job. You not getting the job, you interviewing and not getting selected doesn't mean you weren't qualified, doesn't mean you couldn't have done the job. And I tell candidates that all the time that complain, I should have been hired. I knew how, I know how to do that job. I'm the best candidate. And say, well, the hiring manager selected somebody else, but we're not saying you weren't qualified to do the job. So it's really stay the course, keep pushing. It's repetition, and it's what I tell my recruiters. It's repetition to find the right candidate, right? And in tougher hiring times when it's a candidate market, it's the same thing on the flip side is the repetition, keep pushing. Try not to take it personal as much as you can, but ensure you've got a well-written resume. Ensure that you understand your role and what you play so you can speak to it, you can articulate it. Because a lot of times I find that people have difficulty simply explaining to me what the heck they do for a living. It's like, be really good at telling that. Have your examples of your work examples ready so you can give demonstrated behavioral examples of what you've accomplished. Key accomplishments, know your strengths, have
point.
something to talk about your development areas or your weaknesses without making yourself sound too bad, but really polish your process and just keep pushing, because it will come through, but it's a tough job market for everybody, and it's not, you shouldn't take it personal.
Yeah. Maurice, I'm going to call back to season 2. Let me ask you a question, Ron. Do you think, I'm going to say the words, I'm going to say the letters. Here it goes, Maurice. Do you think AI, and because you're a software guy, right? You're a tech company guy. Do you think AI and the tools and the stuff out there are making it now easier and better for people with different abilities? I want to use that word very intentionally, right? People with different abilities to be accepted in the workplace and to find those jobs? Or is it making it harder? Is it actually stacking the deck against those folks?
I think in some ways, when we integrate AI, I think the idea is that AI will be less biased maybe than a human, but AI is working to get there because the algorithms have bias, because people with biases built the algorithms. So they're still being trained. So it's an interesting concept, but I think ultimately if we're using AI, there can be an element of, less bias there that will look at the abilities, look at the skills, and not necessarily rule somebody out because of these other elements, whether they disclose or don't disclose their abilities. So, yeah, it's interesting, but I think that AI will ultimately get us to a place where there's less bias, where AI is not looking to say, did this person graduate from this educational institution that I support? Because we only want people from these 5 schools. If they're not from those schools, they couldn't possibly do the job, right? But then we find out that a Starbucks barista is the best fit. So I think AI can help eliminate a lot of the bias in the process, and in turn would be beneficial for people from the ability community.
But AI is already being used a lot for the pre-selection of CVs, right? There's several tools out there that do the pre-selection, the keyword selection for the hiring process. Is that true?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll sort of put one myth to bed a little bit. I think everybody feels like if my resume is not worded just perfectly, if I don't use AI to take the job description and write my resume, I'm not going to get through the ATS or the applicant tracking system. Most applicant tracking systems don't have AI. It's actually a recruiter that's ruling candidates out. And in today's day and age, there are so many candidates that apply. You might be applying against 300, 500 applicants. So the reality is, bandwidth-wise, the recruiter may not even get down to number 500. They may stop at 150, and that's all they really need to get through the process. So in that regard, AI would be able to screen all 500 and actually shortlist and determine who were the best, and not just who were the best from the 150. So there is AI that's really more after the fact. Like everybody applies, there's AI that can help refine the list, shortlist, determine who are the best fits based on criteria that's set. But yeah, there is a lot of add-on tools, whether you're doing searches in LinkedIn and using a given tool to, sort of go through all of the profiles that you select to shortlist. But yeah, there is a lot of AI that is playing that role, but just not that role that everybody I see all these posts on LinkedIn and everybody's like, oh, the ATS ruled me out. It was the AI. It's like, no, there's not really AI. It's not that advanced yet from the ATS perspective to do that. It actually still is humans that are ruling you out. So direct your frustration at the humans, not at AI yet.
Nice.
Okay, that I didn't know. I was on the side that really thought that AI would do the ATS and the first selection of keywords and all that. I didn't know that.
It's not really there yet. And from the AI perspective, there's a lot of AI integrated, but it's not as sophisticated or advanced as you would like to think. Just like everybody thinks that recruiters are going to be replaced by AI bots tomorrow. The reality is AI is not there. I've looked at a lot of it. Some of it is good. Some of it is really bad. and people aren't ready to talk to robots yet to get jobs. I mean, do you really want to interview with a robot and be told by a robot that you didn't get the job based on whatever criteria? Everybody's going to feel shortchanged. Yeah. People don't even like to get an auto rejection email from the system that says, we reviewed your resume, you weren't as qualified as other people, we're not hiring you. People hate that. Yeah. How are they going to feel about a robot telling them that they're not qualified?
Especially when the robot tells them they hired their friend robot. I hired a robot like me instead of a human. Ha, ha, ha.
Yeah, you didn't get hired. My AI buddy got hired. Yeah.
That's crazy. That's crazy. Looking forward, what do you think where companies have to go in a DEA? I eventually going to say it properly. I'm getting there.
Any group of initials is fine, Maurice.
Just say diversity initiatives.
There you go.
Diversity initiatives. There you go. Be patient with this German here. Where do you think we have to go as companies to really make it an even playing field, but not going overboard and just being blindsided that way? So where do we have to go?
Yeah, I'm somebody who's really promoting the disability side of things, and I think when we look so diligently, we have to recognize that we've made impacts, right? Like our diversity commitment, our social constructs have evolved and we've made impacts. So let's ensure that we are, in fact, looking at the whole playing field, that we are considering all aspects of it. So it's hard because sometimes it comes down to trying to boil the ocean as a company, depending on your bandwidth, the size of your HR team. It can be difficult. So sometimes you do have to make tough choices. But at the end of the day, what I like to tell everybody is that when it comes to disability inclusion and building accessible hiring processes, you don't have to go find a budget to do that, right? You just have to be intentional about it, raise some awareness, educate some hiring managers, and you can make an impact because HR professionals, recruiting professionals are uniquely positioned to make an impact from right where I sit. Like in my daily job, I can literally make some small adjustments and be making an impact for somebody who's going to be interviewing in the near future. So that's really where I think it comes down to is, roll it down from just the HR program, but raise awareness with the individuals that are on the ground, that are actually doing the work, because we can make an impact and ultimately just have that more objective, inclusive view across the board and limit the biases as much as we can. People don't have to walk like us, talk like us, tell the same jokes. We can certainly learn and benefit from individuals of diverse and varied backgrounds.
Yeah, that's perfect. Where would HR people that are looking to educate themselves, where can they find the resources?
One of the low cost or no cost elements here is that every state has a workforce services organization within their local government. So the work that I did with the Governor's Committee in Utah, the work I've done in North Carolina, there are these workforce services organizations in every state in the U.S. We've also done a lot of work at my company in the UK, in India, Australia, Singapore, other countries around promoting advocacy for people with disabilities. So it exists everywhere, but from the US perspective, every state has an organization. So I would extend it out there to say, if you're looking to make an impact as an employer in the state you're in, reach out to me. I can leverage my contacts in the states where I've made those inroads and get you in touch with the right person so you can do the same thing. Get free training from these organizations on ADA, Americans with Disabilities Act, disability access to understand more. So again, this doesn't take a budget to do this. There's a lot of work that you can do to raise awareness and bring accessibility and inclusion to your organization without having to open up the checkbook.
Yeah, that's perfect. Nice. I love that. I love that. Yeah. As we're coming to the end, we have a couple of quick hitting questions that we always ask at the end. One of them is, what is the most recent thing that you learned that had a huge impact on you?
So when we talk about inclusion, and Maurice, you talked about how you've always looked at hiring people from diverse backgrounds because you felt like that would be beneficial. That's something that I understood But I really learned, I began to hire more junior team members, not always hire senior team members that can step in and immediately do the job, hire junior team members. And while there were some funny aspects to it, because, I'm sort of like seasoned in my career, we have people that are newer in their career. What I learned, though, the takeaway that I had is that individuals from diverse backgrounds and really from different generations can bring in perspectives, unique perspectives that you may not have had. And even, an older guy in the industry can learn something new and get a new perspective. So it really opened my eyes, Maurice, to something that maybe for you was a little more natural. For me, not that it was unnatural, but something that I did learn. And I really put an exclamation point on it when I had individuals that were younger in their career that had a perspective that made an impact and caused us to change ways that we approach things that were maybe tried and true. But we learned that there are other ways to do things, or just a new lens we can put on something to make an impact. So I'd say that's one of the biggest things that I've learned in recent times.
Cool.
That's perfect. That's perfect. Yeah, and I we talked about it last year too. I like to hire younger people because I always said I'm already old, so we don't need other old people in my team. Especially in marketing, especially in digital marketing, right? Those younger guys, they're doing a lot of stuff naturally that we have to learn and work on keeping up with, while they're just using on a day-to-day basis. Another thing I want to ask you is, what's your go-to song?
My go-to song. I'm not going to say Eye of the Tiger by Survivor because that's way too cliche, and that's probably Russ's.
Yeah. And I also do the Rocky pose when I listen to it. That's it.
It's funny enough, Eye of the Tiger was never so much my song.
That's what I do like Survivor. I really enjoyed them, and let's leave it like this. So the song from Survivor, High on You, had a particular impact because I vividly remember driving my 1976 Camaro, and I know I'm dating myself here. Vividly remember driving my 1976 Camaro down the road after my girlfriend broke up with me, with that song playing at top volume with tears streaming down my eyes. So that brings back a traumatic memory for me, but that actually happened. But I'd say anything from Survivor. As a band, loved them, including the commercials that they did. Was it Real Men of Genius? Those commercials that they did.
That I don't know. That's I grew up in a different market, so I don't know that.
You're age shaming me now, Maurice, because I think I'm older than you. So
deep cut there.
Not by a lot. Not by a lot. No, I simply grew up in Germany, right? So the stuff that you would see here is not necessarily the same products, right?
Real Men of Genius was a great series of commercials where the Survivor lead singer would sing that refrain at the as the commercial. They were comedic commercials, but he would sing that refrain. It was pretty funny. Maybe I'll send a link to you so you can educate yourself on greatness.
There you
All
go.
right.
That is it.
So that is it. Yeah. So Ron, tomorrow you get an email that tells you take your family, how many you want of them, and you can go wherever you like. Money's no option, and timing is not a problem as well. Where would you go?
So I've been an assistant scoutmaster for many years. I have a son that's an Eagle Scout. I am an absolute huge lover of the mountains. So anything wilderness mountains. Believe it or not, I probably would drag my family kicking and screaming to Alaska, but in the summertime. I've always had a bucket list dream of fishing in the river and hooking the big salmon, sort of thing. So probably would visit Alaska in the summertime to see the beauty and the majestic mountains there.
Yeah, I can I can stand up for that one. I heard there's a very vivid startup scene in Alaska. So just for that, I would like to go
Food
there.
for thought. Yeah,
It would not surprise me. Yeah.
No, that's what I heard. Yeah, that's what I heard.
Good stuff.
Fantastic, Ron. It was an absolute pleasure having you on here and telling your story.
100%.
Because we haven't had that in this show so far, and I think it's very important that we hear all the different aspects and all the different areas of what you as a business and you as the individual, what you have to look for and how you have to prepare yourselves to really, really achieve what you want to achieve.
Yeah, good stuff.
Right.
Yeah, I appreciate the opportunity, and I'm happy to leave us on a dad joke if we want to do that.
Ooh,
We're all dads here.
There we go.
Have you heard about the new restaurant on the moon?
No. Tell us about
They
it.
say the food is amazing, but there's no atmosphere.
Thanks, Dad. On that note.
On that note, exactly. With that, thank you, everyone, all our fellow crazy people out there, for listening or watching this episode. Stay tuned for when the next time comes around that we welcome another crazy person and listening to their very interesting story. Until then, I say, stay safe, stay crazy, and have a bit of fun, okay? Bye-bye.